Hello, everybody, and welcome to X Pitch, where these three contestants will all pitch a show to me to see which one I will pick up for network TV next fall. Well, at least the character I will be playing.
Mhm.
So we will go in the order here of how I have the Skype pictures. So, Marcus Shadow, you are up first.
All right. Well, first of all, it should be noted that all of our pitches will be for TV shows, as you said, and they will be DC Comics related. Um,
All right.
Can I just
so
also ask a question?
yes,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to confirm what network we're pitching to, because the big difference if we're pitching to, say, CBS or NBC, as opposed to if we're pitching it for the CW.
It's a generic one, so we could do anything.
it's the XCOM
Sure.
network.
I work
Fair
for any network.
Yeah.
But anyway, so my pitch is relatively simple. It's something that's been sorely missing, and something that I think would work very well as an episodic television show. It is Batman related, and it is a young Bruce Wayne, perhaps college age, maybe right pre-college age, about late teens, 17, 18, when he's off in the world training to be the Batman. And I was thinking, set it to where when he meets Henry Ducard, the, I guess, world famous detective that teaches him how to be a detective, and it's their adventures. It'd be more like kind of like a CSI type show, if you will. CSI with Law and Order and NCIS, all of them rolled into one, where it's a crime drama, but it's also doing all the crime scene and stuff like that, doing all the intuition, doing all the the putting the evidence together, and then trying to solve the crime. It'd be kind of cool just to see Batman's thinking process before he becomes Batman, how he puts it all together and deduces things, and in that case, builds his skill set, which would later then turn into him becoming the world's greatest detective. And I think that'd be kind of cool. So it's like Batman without the focus being on Batman, if that makes sense.
That does make sense.
And I like that idea. That does sound like it's got some merit to it.
Fortunately, I don't have a cast for it because, yeah, I'm not too good with the young actors. Don't know many of them, and of course, Bruce Wayne would have to be cast young.
No, fair enough. Like I said, it sounds cool. Sounds like it has some merit to it. It'd be almost like the Sherlock series from the BBC, but Batman. Which I like that.
Yeah, Sherlock in tights. Because I think Bruce would probably be in costume. Maybe go with the backstory of him. He was the first one to wear the Robin costume, so maybe he runs around in the Robin costume with Ducard or something.
No, fair enough. What do you think, Jim?
That's an interesting concept. I think it'd be very good. I think something like that would work very well in terms of Batman learning his detective skills and ability, perhaps encountering some of his more well-known foes for the first time, maybe in some of their early years. Things like that in terms of just, like I said, having it as more of a CSI type show, but rather than the actual police being involved, it's more, Descartes and Batman dealing with this sort of thing. So I think it will be very interesting to see. I think it would be also interesting if that show existed. I think that would have great potential for crossovers with the actual TV show Gotham. Perhaps while Jim Gordon is attempting to solve crimes for the actual Gotham PD, perhaps Batman and Descartes are also trying to solve the same crimes but using different methods. So that could be very interesting for crossover purposes as well.
Could be interesting. I was also thinking going with more of the classical Ducard of, I believe, French, I think, and Bruce actually went to like Paris or wherever the hell he's based out of, so it'd be like in France, and so you wouldn't necessarily have Batman's Rogues Gallery. Maybe some of the really, really lesser known ones, like you could have, if it's going to be in Europe, you could have like the Rise of the KG Beast or something like that as one of the strands, because he's been there long enough. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
It'd be more Ducard focused, is what I'm looking at. Is Batman is the Robin? He's the sidekick, so it'd be more Ducard focused. He'd be more the main character.
That makes sense. And you could, that's true, fair enough. I didn't consider that, but you could also say perhaps in an episode or in an arc they take perhaps Bruce wants to show Descartes what it is that he's going to be dealing with, and perhaps takes him to Gotham. Maybe they solve a crime in Gotham or something. You could work a crossover in. I mean, writing can
Oh
be anything.
yes. Mm-hmm.
You
Oh yeah.
And I'm trying to think, does Batman have any other European villains? I can't even think besides. I mean, who does he fight besides? There's got to be somebody in there. I can't remember. He has.
Considering there's like a Batman of England, I would hope so.
Oh, that's true. He could team up with Knight and Squire. That'd be fucking awesome.
Except they kind of don't exist until after Batman exists. But yeah.
Not necessarily. They're their own independent heroes who just happen to be very similar to Batman and Robin. They aren't necessarily directly based or influenced by him. I think it's stated that while Squire was a recent thing, there's always kind of been a knight going around doing their thing. It's sort of like a passed on legacy, kind of like the Batman. I think it was around before Batman. I've only skimmed one of the graphic novels. I don't know the details.
The other thing they could do, which I think would be really interesting, and they could do it as one of the longer like multi-part arcs, is that Ducard and Bruce find this string of murders, and it looks like it's the same person, but they can't really pinpoint who it is. And come to find out later on, as the story progresses, it's Azrael who's committing the murders. Lest we forget John Paul Valley's father, the original Azrael, Order of St. Dumas. I believe the Order of St. Dumas was based originally in Europe, was it not, Mole?
I think it was.
So I think that'd be kind of cool to see the original Azrael before his fall, before John Paul Valley has to take up the mantle.
That would be kind of cool.
But that's my pitch.
Opinions, oh studio executive man.
That's a good concept. I know CSIs did really well, so that does actually sound interesting. I like that it's a take on Batman that's not the normal take. And so yeah, I think that could actually be a pretty good show.
And also, I'd like to say the reason I came up with this one is because through various discussions with the Mole, we've pretty much come to the conclusion and we agree that the bigwig studio executives in this day and age, both TV and primarily movies, seem to have forgotten that Batman's greatest title is the world's greatest detective. And Batman doesn't do any detecting in almost any movie he's ever been in.
I hope he just punches things really hard.
Exactly. I'm like, well, here's Detective Batman.
Out of 10, I would give that, I'm going to say 8.5.
Woohoo.
Ooh, that's pretty high.
That is. I'd like to ask one question.
Yes.
In regards to if this show were to be greenlit.
Yes.
Can we give it sort of a How I Met Your Mother framing device and have this all being the memories of current Batman being voiced by Kevin Conroy?
Actually, if I was going to have a voice, if it's going to be the Batman voice, I'd want the one out of Arkham Origins.
Fair enough. He's very good also. I've heard him in some of the clips, although I have yet to play the game.
Fair enough.
You're not missing much.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Oh, studio executive, moving on.
Yes. All right. So for the next pitch, we will go to James Phoenix.
All right. So, my pitch, I went with something that basically what I feel. Well, I'll think about it. If we're talking about shows based on superheroes, what's the biggest superhero show on TV right now? It's Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Which,
or Arrow.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think Arrow would like a word with you.
In terms of ratings, I'm going to have to debate that. Yeah. And really that's partially only because Marvel is on a much more widely dispersed network, but I've heard Arrow's a very good show. I haven't watched it, but I'm just saying, given that Marvel's on a much more prominent network and is part of a much more well-known,
more prominent
universe.
Than CW, really? I think CW would like a word with you.
They do have the ABC.
Yeah, it's on ABC, and that's like one of the 3 major networks on the planet.
Fair enough. Anyway, continuing.
Yeah. CW is a big network, but it's not. I put it this way: CW only exists because CBS and WB didn't want to each own a second network, so they said, "Fuck it, we'll own it together." That's the only reason that network exists.
Hey, that network still produces great shows.
It does. It produces some great shows. It's just the sort of thing where most people, when they're looking at TV listings, say, okay, what do we got? CBS, NBC, ABC, and then CW is like an afterthought. Unfortunately, I hate to say that because they do have good shows, but that's just kind of the view I see.
Fair enough.
Anywho, back on topic. So, Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is huge right now. It's getting ratings up the wazoo. It's getting people excited for the Marvel movies. By the way, on a related Marvel note, for the record, one of the things that inspired us to do this episode was those new Marvel miniature series that are going to be coming out on Netflix, so do check those out. Anywho, so I think Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a good show because it has a balance. And that's it. It has both dramatic aspects going on. There's some action sequences. There's some interpersonal drama, a little bit of romance here and there. That's not necessarily important. But there's a lot of interpersonal drama. You're learning about the intricacies of the characters. Some of them have some dark backstories, some of which we don't even know fully yet. But there's also the comedy aspect where there's some jokes going on. It's got kind of a lighthearted feel. It feels a little more, it's not bogged down in the drama. Like some of these shows you see on the air, like, for example, something like for example, as much as I enjoy the show, something like a Revolution, which is like nothing but it's dramatic. Ooh, yeah, here's a little joke, but ooh, drama, that sort of thing. Those can be good shows, but I think a superhero film, unless it is something like, for example, a Batman that can handle it, that's built on that darkness, most superhero franchises can't thrive on that, and I think that's part of the problem with a lot of these upcoming superhero franchises. So what I'd like to propose is something in sort of a same feel as Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., something that has that balance. The other thing that ties into this is that I think we need to go outside the box to a lesser-known hero. Because I feel like everybody knows these main heroes, and the problem with booking shows based on them is that it draws certain expectations from the viewership that know those heroes and what they expect to see. It's the same thing you had when, Ben Affleck's going to be Batman. What? You can't have Ben Affleck as Batman? Batman doesn't do... Yeah. Same thing. So if we go for someone a little less known, someone that's not as established in the lore... at least to people outside of the general nerddom, as it were, then you have a better opportunity to be able to personalize the character a little more without people getting quite as pissed off at you. Which is why, in the vein of both going with a lesser-known hero, but also going with probably one of the most entertaining heroes and one that not many people know that much about, I'd like to propose a show based on Booster Gold. Yes. Now, if you don't know, I don't know if you know about Booster Gold's history. I read up on this, and effectively, the concept of Booster Gold, I think we all know he's from the future, 25th century to be exact. And the concept of Booster Gold is basically he worked in the future. He was a star athlete, but aside from that, he didn't have all that much going for him. He was born poor. His father ran off. He had a sister who loved him very much, but didn't really have much going in his life. He got himself kicked out of college and basically fucked his life up because they found out that he was betting on his own football games. Or specifically, he was throwing the games and betting on himself to lose because his drunk, abandoned father came back into his life and talked him into doing it. How? I don't know. Anywho, so Booster Gold decides he wants to salvage his life, and he is, extremely arrogant and self-concerning. So he gets a job working as a night guard at a museum in the future, and he steals a bunch of relics, including but not limited to Brainiac 5's force field belt, and a flight ring that I want to say belonged to one of the Justice League groups, I think. I don't remember. A Legion flight ring, that's it. Gets a Legion flight ring and an assortment of other gadgets from a wide range of people past. Designs a suit. Gets a suit that gives him enhanced strength and some protection. And he borrows a time machine that's also in the museum, conveniently enough. And he goes back to the 20th century with the intent of becoming a well-known superhero so he can get fame, and also forming a corporation based around his superhero duties so he can get rich. However, it takes him some time to do this, and despite Booster Gold being, at least at first, a huge asshole.
So he goes back in time to become Tony Stark?
Pretty much. Yeah,
Okay,
he basically goes back in time to become Tony Stark. That's a good analogy. Yes, he wants to be well known the world over and filthy stinking rich, and just that's his initial goal.
And he's a douche.
However, he's a douche to start. But when Booster Gold gets back in time, he actually manages to when he first gets back there, he manages to save the president, and that's what kind of gets his name known. And the way his name came about is that he was going to go with the name Gold Star, but his nickname when he was in college on the football team was called Booster. And when, in a fluster after saving the president, when he would ask his name, he flustered his name and accidentally mangle what he was saying, causing President Ronald Reagan, which is when he came back to, by the way, to introduce him as Booster Gold to the American public, and that name stuck. And it's kind of a recurring joke, actually. They actually refer to him as Buster Gold instead of Booster Gold. It's kind of an annoying recurring joke that could be. But the concept of the show, with some slight alterations to work for TV, I think, would be, okay, you have Booster Gold the man. Let's see. What the hell's his real name? I lost it. Sorry. Real name, Michael John Carter. And effectively, he would arrive in the past with the we could see a little bit of the future where he's maybe, we see him get kicked out. Maybe he's in college when we start. We see him get kicked out, steal the stuff, go back in time. So I would think the show will be about Booster Gold arrives back in time, and he's got his gadgets, and he sets about to try to establish himself, and perhaps he saves the president, President Reagan in this case, and his name kind of gets announced, and people start hearing about this guy. Now, once this is done, the issue Booster Gold runs into is what he starts to realize after, is that because he's in the past, things have started affecting the time stream. And so Booster Gold kind of makes it his lot in life to preserve the time stream and the history that he knows from the future, what little of it he actually remembers anyway. There's a storyline that comes in later where he realizes that he tried to stop he did a bunch of shit that caused events that had he actually remembered his history, he could have prevented. But anywho, so effectively he becomes well known. And I think what it would be is basically Booster Gold comes back in time and maybe saves the president, becomes somewhat well known, not hugely well known as someone like, say, Superman, but well known enough at least in the city that he's in. Maybe instead of he's maybe saves the president, and people hear about this guy. But maybe at that point, he realizes that because of him being there, he has to work to kind of preserve the timeline, and basically goes through the drama of understanding that, hey, basically the conflict of the show is his own arrogance and desire to be known and to be famous and rich conflicts with his conscience telling him, number one, you're from the future. You can't tell people who the hell you are because they know you're from the future. It's going to fuck the timeline worse than you already did. And also, it's your responsibility to, try to help preserve events that happened and make sure they happen as they are supposed to without interfering and causing changes to the time stream in what you're doing. And it's established through the comics over the years in various events that Booster Gold has more of a purpose that he knows, or through a really convoluted time paradox that basically Booster Gold has a son who is also a time traveler who goes by the name of Rip. What the hell is his full name? Rip Hunter. And eventually what ends up happening is that there's an older, wiser Booster Gold who watches over the timeline, Booster Gold in an older form, whose son Rip Hunter trains the young Booster Gold who doesn't know that this is his son. So what you could have is, for example, have Booster Gold arrive in the past, save the president, become somewhat well known, but this starts to, in and of itself, obviously Reagan lived, so obviously he was supposed to get saved, but have at that point Rip Hunter, perhaps someone, an older, maybe a more well-known mentor type actor, arrive and say, look, Booster Gold, Michael John, look, you saved the president, which is good, but being in the past is a problem. You can endanger events of the future and change the time stream. And for maybe the first half of the first season, you have Booster Gold being an arrogant ass and not caring. And maybe he goes out and tries to stop crimes, become famous, and that's his initial goal. Maybe it's not until halfway through the first season that's when Rip Hunter arrives and says, Booster Gold, you're starting to endanger the timeline. You're changing events. And throughout the rest of the first season, his conscience starts to develop more as he's still trying to do his thing, but each time he's realizing more and more, wait, if I do this, what's going to happen? He's starting to doubt himself in this role. But eventually, around the end of the first season, there's some big event which you could interestingly use. There's a lot of different events that he's gone through, but perhaps the character Supernova could arrive, who is someone that Booster Gold battled, but who was revealed to actually be the older Booster Gold, I think. Again, there's a lot of convoluted time shit here that you have to simplify for the general viewing audience. But just say maybe it's not that. Maybe it's just maybe you just use Supernova as a supervillain, like to be his nemesis, whoever. Maybe it turns out to be, somebody he knows or whatever. But anyway, so the idea being that Booster Gold would start off as an arrogant asshole, and the journey of the show would be becoming less of an arrogant asshole and realizing that he'd actually, first of all, realizing that what he does can jeopardize the time stream, and for lack of a better cliche, with great power comes great responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And effectively, that's the first season is him learning this, and then as he goes on, as Rip Hunter arrives in his lives and sort of starts to mentor him, he starts to understand, okay, well, this is the case, but Booster Gold, you are actually here in the 20th century for a reason. The fact that Reagan is alive in your known history means you were supposed to be here. But what you have, I can't tell you exactly. I know why you're supposed to be here because I time travel, but I can't tell you why you're supposed to be here. And it would be Booster Gold figuring out why did I come, why did destiny or fate or whatever you want to call it send me back here? What is my purpose in being here besides saving people? How do I find the balance between preserving the time stream and meeting my goal, meeting the goals set for me apparently, already in history. What is my role there? Combined with how do these both interact with him, being an arrogant asshole, wanting to be rich and famous. So it's an evolution of a character from rich, famous jock asshole that wants to be rich and famous to hero that understands, the responsibility of what he's doing and how this is going to affect everything around him, to time stream icon that he is intended to become in the future. So it's watching the journey of the character, because you could have, not only would you have the drama of him going through all this, but at the same time, it's still Booster Gold. So anybody from the nerddom who knows anything about the character knows he's gonna be throwing out Spider-Man like banter and basically being a smartass. So there's gonna be a lot of comedy involved. The other character you could pull in at one point is again, depending on which version of the character you pull in here, because New 52 is his sister, who he grew up with, and effectively she and in the new 50, in the old version, she actually died. She came back in time for a short time and became the hero known as Gold Star, taking his originally intended name, but she ends up dying in a battle, which greatly affects him. So you could have her showing up maybe as another character, working with him maybe in the second season, and then at the end of that season, she dies maybe. And then I think the biggest thing you could work in to probably end the series near the end is Booster Gold has a sidekick whose name is Skeet.
His little robot.
His little robot friend, who was actually a little security robot at the museum where he stole the shit that went back in time with him. That's where he came from. He was actually a little security dude who helped him break into the museum and steal the shit because, Skeet. So, one of the biggest storylines in the Booster Gold history that I've read here is effectively you'd end the series with Skeets is always kind of there helping him out, and in addition to having a little robot for maybe a Booster Gold hideout, I feel like Skeets would also act in a Jarvis role. Because Booster Gold's suit has been upgraded at various points, much like the Iron Man armor. And there's another character you tie in, because almost all the various upgrades and things that tied into Booster Gold were done by a man who became his best friend, the Blue Beetle. So you could tie the Blue Beetle and introduce another little lesser-known hero that could team up with him periodically, have that be a recurring character as well. And you could have his suit get upgraded at various points. Maybe it gets to the point where he's using, Skeets as a Jarvis. But one of the primary storylines in the history was that slowly but surely, where is it? Basically, Skeets was Skeet starts acting kind of strange, and they're trying to figure out what it is that did this and why he's starting to act strange. It's a little bits at first, and eventually what they end up finding out, where is this thing? There's also a cool point where Booster Gold gets who was the what here? Is it Blue Beetle that he gets here? Somebody. He grabs another character and he brings him actually to Batman, because he knows this guy can help Batman stop Brother Eye, because in the history books he never stopped Brother Eye, so he helps that happen. So you could have a Batman cameo in there, even from maybe Ben Affleck, if you want to work it in that way. That can be kind of cool. Booster's also the one that named Doomsday, so maybe have that happen. But anyway, the major event. Sure.
I was thinking you want to go with a Guardian of Time kind of thing, right? With the whole Rip Hunter thing. Instead of Rip Hunter and Booster Gold himself, what if you use the actual Guardian of the Time stream?
Who?
Wave Rider. He's literally the guardian of the time stream. That's his job until he turns evil and becomes Monarch. But yeah. But what if he comes back and he's a recurring character and you can use him as kind of an anti-hero, so you kind of set him up and people don't know, unless you're familiar with DC, people wouldn't know whether he's a villain or not because he's constantly stopping Booster Gold while trying to make sure, the good stuff happens and the bad stuff doesn't. He's also stopping him and saying, well, you have to preserve the timeline. You can't just go around doing all this stuff because you're going to change the timeline, and I can't let you change the timeline.
That could be fun also, and there's a point here that mentions actually at one point, Booster Gold gets slightly, at one point Booster Gold gets really badly injured in a battle, and at this point Blue Beetle upgrades his armor again to not only armor him and allow him to fight, but it also acts as a life support system to keep him alive, and he can't remove it. And at one point in here, it mentions he actually, at one point, he actually made a deal with the Monarch, who used his powers to actually regenerate his missing arm and heal his injuries so he could take the suit off and be a normal guy again outside of Booster Gold.
So they turned him into Iron Man. Wonderful.
Kind of. Anywho, so effectively, the main storyline, like I said, with the Skeets thing is basically effectively Skeets kind of goes nuts, and Skeets basically starts trying to take over the time stream effectively. He's malfunctioning, becomes hysterical, and he starts reporting incorrect data. That's how they're first noticing it. And then he goes back and he gets one of Booster Gold's ancestors and brings him to the present and has him be Supernova for a while and uses him to get back into Rip Hunter's lab because he wants to take over time. It's kind of convoluted. They try to trap Skeets in the Phantom Zone. It doesn't work. And this could be your whole final arc for the series, is it's having little hints of Skeets here and there, and how it finally built up that after using Teal Morrow to bait Skeets out, they find out that Skeets is actually Mr. Mind in disguise. If you don't know anything about Mr. Mind, he's effectively a little bug, a 2-inch alien worm of high intelligence that can take over people's bodies and shit. And basically he used Skeets as a cocoon to evolve to a new form. So that could be the idea, is that maybe something happens when he first gets to the past where it's offhandedly noted something, a little weird thing, but nobody knows what it is. And over the course of the whole series, you build this up. And then at the end, you reveal that Skeets has actually been Mr. Mind almost the whole time. And then that's the final villain, is the Mr. Mind who's evolved through Skeets and is now, some kind of big powerful force. Either maybe you could make him a technological force in this one, like a Brainiac type thing, or even, just have him evolve into some kind of a more powerful insectoid body. And that could be your final villain from this series. And it's up to Booster Gold to stop him, and even even Monarch and Rip Hunter could be like, this is why you were sent back, to stop Mr. Mind from taking over the world. Then it can be you can work that in as being the ultimate goal of Booster Gold. So just reading about the character, I think it would be a really interesting premise of the show to show a hero that's a really cool hero, but that not many people know about, and show his evolution from arrogant jackass that wants to be rich and famous to guy understanding responsibility and being a generally good hero, to truly being a superhero and overcoming all this and stopping the supervillain and being the hero, while at the same time preserving the time stream and becoming the older, wise Booster Gold that we know of, or that is shown in the comics to be sort of the ultimo guardian of the time stream, who is now guiding even Rip Hunter, whom when he had him as his son, he trained so that Rip Hunter could train him in return, because time wibbly wobbly timey wimey. I just think it could be a really cool show. I know it's a little convoluted, I apologize, but that was kind of my premise with the Booster Gold thing. I think it'll be in the vein of Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It would have all the drama and a lot of cool comic related storylines, while at the same time having the humor and being light enough that people don't feel bogged down and they can enjoy it and watch it and laugh about it and really just have fun. I unfortunately I also didn't have time for really any casting. But off the top of my head, Booster Gold is supposed to be kicked out of college, so you have to assume early 20s when he first goes back in time. So right now I don't know, but if you were to wait a couple of years, I think somebody who might be good for the role just popped into my head randomly as I was thinking about it is Nathan Kress, whom you might know played Freddy in iCarly. And in a number of other characters in a number of Nickelodeon movies. But I think that while he typically played the nerd there and didn't get a chance to really shine, I think that he really is a generally funny guy. And given the opportunity to come into a character like this, again, he's only 18 now, so it'd have to be, a few years, he'd have to be a little older. But I mean, something like that where he's truly kind of coming into his own. I think he could really do well in the role. I haven't, it would depend on his ability to whip out the witty sarcasm, but I think he could pull it off. I think it would be really really fun to see. And I think that if you were going to do something fun in the series, if you wanted to introduce the old super wise protector of the time stream, Ultimo Awesome Booster Gold, like near the end of the series, like maybe he comes, maybe not congratulating himself, but we see him meet with Rip Hunter a couple of times, and maybe we hear we hear the voice but don't actually see him until the end. I think that would be a perfect role for Bruce Campbell. I think that'd be awesome. But that's what I got. So thank you for your time, Mr. Executive.
I'd watch that.
That'd be interesting.
Well, yes. I definitely like that there's a lot of room for drama and humor. That'll be really nice. And I like that it's he's kind of a relatable hero because he has like earthly goals of like, oh, I want to be rich and famous, so people can relate to that. And especially if you throw in some stuff about him trying to learn and or having the gadgets malfunction on him is
that happened a
like
lot
an
too.
Everyday person.
Yeah, that actually happened a lot too. Because initially he had the initial suit and it was really badass and awesome. But when after fairly early on, when the suit was first damaged and his stuff got broken, Blue Beetle built him a new suit. But the first new suit that Blue Beetle built him, the shit malfunctioned all the time. So you could work that in, like maybe he saves the president, but then after the first or second battle, his futuristic stuff gets damaged. So his friend Blue Beetle built him new shit, but it doesn't always work. So that could be an angle. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I like that he has like two sidekicks. He's got the robot and he's got Blue Beetle. So
yeah,
robot. You got the mentor character. You got some really good.
Yeah, like I said, it's changing a little bit from the comic because a lot of this stuff happened at different times. It wasn't necessarily with them, all these characters at the same time. But I think given that all these characters are in his history, you could do a little playing with the continuity to make it work in such a way that these characters can exist and make it, make it work in a TV show format. And I think, like I said, I think it'd be really cool. My only caveat, there's something you have to make sure of because I've seen this happen in. This one I think has happened in DC before. You have to get good writers for this because if you introduce the Rip Hunter character, who's like the mysterious time guy talking about Booster Gold, you have to be really, really careful, especially if it's DC, because if you don't do it right, he'll turn into a clone of Judas Traveler. So that most part I'm muted and laughing at that right now.
No, I'm here.
Surprised nobody laughed at that because Judas Traveler's an awful fucking character. But anyway, go ahead. So, did you have a rating, Executive?
Yes. I think there's a lot of good potential there. The only part I would worry about is you had some good ideas of how to make the show last longer, which I like. But the only really pitfall I would see is that Booster Gold isn't like a huge well-known name, but that could easily change with some good casting and some good writing.
Right, and I think that was kind of the point of the show, is that it's a sort of thing where you could do what you needed to without there being prior expectations. Because when you have prior expectations, especially for someone like a well-known hero like a Superman or a Batman, it's very easy to let the fans down, and that annoys fans, and that can hinder your ability. That's why DC doesn't actually have a cinematic universe to speak of yet, because a lot of the movies they've done, except the Batman movies, obviously, and even some of those, cough, Batman and Robin, cough, have let people down. So having a hero like Booster Gold, who is known at least to the nerddom, but not necessarily widely known amongst the public as a whole, would give you a chance to do what you need to do with the character without people getting annoyed and turning off just because, that's not what this character would do. Right. So it's positives and negatives. You're right.
I would give that an 8.
Fair enough.
Okay, so last up we have Chriz the Mole.
I will say in advance, like I mentioned before we went to do the recording, I mentioned to him, I didn't write this knowing what everyone had picked, because one of my pointers a little negative towards one of the ones chose, but it wasn't intended as that, and I apologize in advance.
Fair enough.
I give to you, Richter, DC Comics presents Elseworlds, hosted by Batmite. He's an imp from the Might Dimension. Not the 5th dimension like some people think. He's the Might Dimension. Well, they could be related. It's not actually confirmed. I chose him as a host because look at anything DC related that you guys have all experienced, like DC Universe and Injustice. Batman is always the focus of him because he's so popular that it draws the casual people in. But at the same time, more the diehard comic fans are kind of sick of Batman at this point. So he finds a balance in that he hosts it, which means we don't need Batman in every episode or Batman people in every episode. We can then go to Green Lantern, Superman, Supergirl, and so forth just to balance it out. But you still got the Batman one to draw him in. He's also comical and fourth wall breaking. Like in some stuff he's been in, he acts like a fanboy for Batman, and you see him be like, "Yeah, the Batmobile's awesome sauce" and stuff, which that just makes him so much like the perfect crypt keeper like host for this show. And basically, each episode would star new actors, like the Twilight Zone, because it's very in the same genre, if you will, as the Twilight Zone and Tales of the Unexpected and those types of anthology shows. It's like that. The series would not need to be followed every week, so casual fan base can actually watch it, and the diehard people tune in because it's DC. Why the hell would they not? The stories can be based on Elseworlds, but you can also get new stuff. And also you can explore different times and have fun with it. Like Patrick Warburton as the Adam West style Batman, awesome. Or how about a Smallville reunion for an episode, or a Lois and Clark reunion for an episode, just so fans of those shows get a special like one team up episode, if you will, because those cast and crew are back for one episode, like a special of like this is where the characters are now type deal. So yeah, that's my pitch.
So, okay. How long do you think each show would run? Like each episode would be like,
I'd
to be like,
I'd see it being like an hour long episode, like a 40-minute one, like
Okay.
the Twilight Zone and stuff. So each one would be like a mini self-contained movie where you could go into like the Vampire Batman one for one if you wanted to actually go into the Batman ones, or how about some What If Green Lantern stuff, or how about Kingdom Come if you want to go in there.
I was gonna say that'd have to be a multi-parter or a made-for-TV movie.
Yeah. Yeah, or like I said, how about a Smallville one for like a special one where we get to see Tom Welling in the suit for the entire 40 minutes, or most of it at least.
Okay. The only thing I would worry about is how often, like, the kind of effects and costumes you need, just because if you have a different actors each time. But I definitely like the idea of that it's that it's like very self-contained, so that's good for syndication and whatnot. And I think that also that's really good because then you don't have to worry about continuity. So, you can write a lot of other stuff and you don't have to worry about if that fits with the episode before it and whatnot.
True. They could get around the costume issue by maybe only using one hero per episode. It's like, okay, we need one Superman, one Wonder Woman and stuff like that, and maybe using the same people for one series a couple of times. Or short amount of episodes, like say 16 a year.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Let me see. Out of 10. I think I'd have to go with an 8.5. The only drawback I would see would be like it might cost higher, but I like that you can put in any hero, so there's you can get the name recognition, you can get people watching, and there's a lot of freedom in that. So for writing and scenarios and all that stuff. So I think I'd give that an 8.5.
And
Nice.
Warner Brothers could use this to establish actors and actresses as heroes without having to make a full-blown movie.
Yep.
And
They
they don't
can
have to worry about if it flops because it's just one episode of a TV show.
Yeah, they can use them as like tasters, as
Yeah.
well as referencing older stuff
Yeah.
and different styles and stuff too. Like you mentioned with Batman, we don't really see him detecting. One episode could be detecting Batman, whereas the other one could be vampire Batman and stuff in a different series and stuff. So that would kind of work.
Can we get Jonathan Frakes to direct all the episodes?
I'm
Yes.
gonna say
Makes money.
I'm gonna say maybe.
Well, I'll at least get him to direct a few each season, maybe not all of them.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
On a related note, I don't think it's either this week's or next week's. He's directing the Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode.
Nice. Although I did actually kind of have an idea for a director.
Oh,
Okay.
I was thinking the X-Men director, Bryan Singer.
That could work.
Because to be fair, he has recently commented he has a desire to do a new Twilight Zone. Therefore, you could probably convince him, instead of Twilight Zone, why don't you do this? And we've seen what he can do with superheroes, so that could kind of cool.
Yes, but the caveat is we've also seen what he did with DC superheroes. It was called Superman Returns.
Yes, which is when he's trying to follow continuity. This time he doesn't have to.
True. Wait, following continuity, where in continuity did Superman have a baby that was then a deadbeat dad to?
Nowhere, but it was a lot of the stuff in that was unfortunately from Superman 1 and 2. I wish it'd been a standalone origin story like we got now.
but anyway.
Yeah.
So would you like to bring us to a close?
Yes, well, those were the pitches for some pretty good shows that I think went pretty well. Those were some really good shows that I would like to see. So thank you very much for joining us. As always, it was Marcus Shadow, Chriz the Mole, Jim's Phoenix, and I was the stay-at-home dad gamer, Richter Hammer. Good night, everybody.